So we'll talk today about residue gifts and more complicated residue gifts, and when you need segments and that kind of stuff. And then we'll open the floor to questions. And thanks. Obviously, we were postponed from last week, so I appreciate everybody joining us. So let's get into it. So I'm going to just share my screen. So we'll concentrate right now on on balance of estate gifts and more complicated ones. So we have a little help desk. I'm just going to move this over. If you hit the question mark here and typed in, residue or segments or something like that, this would come up. This is one of our help desk articles, and it explains the difference between your most common kind of gifts, the simpler gifts, and the complicated residue gifts. And this is important to understand, to know where to sort of start. So if you're ever giving, an entire portion of the residue, whether it's 100% or some smaller percentage or part, to one person, okay, or to two people but equally, or to a group of people but equally, or to a class of people but equally, you're going to use this simple approach, which is just adding a gift. You add a gift, and you pick who the beneficiaries are, the percentage that they're getting, and that's basically it. It's the more complicated ones that we're going to talk about now, which are when you are dealing with a percentage of the residue that's less than the entire residue, so some smaller amount, and you are intending that smaller percentage is going to be further divided into smaller percentages. So, for example, 50% of the residue, and now I want to deal with that 50% of the residue and break it down 75% to this person, 25% to this group of people. That's when we need to use our segments. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about, these more complicated situations. So let's take, for example, that the client wants to add a simple gift, for example. Let's just say a percentage of the residue to a group of people equally. So here we go. We're going to pick our beneficiaries or our class, whatever, and then we're going to pick the percentage that they're going to get. Well, they're going to split 45%. Okay. There we go. That's done. But now we want to give that other 55%, and we want to break that down into unequal amounts or cash, like a legacy out of that 55%, not out of the total amount, but out of that 50% segment. That's when we need to use segments, because a segment is a percentage of the residue. So there's this button here that says use segments. And that's going to be important if we need to do this kind of complicated distribution. So let's click use segments. So what that did was it took the simple gift and it shows that that's going to be out of segment 1, right? There's that simple gift of 45% being divided among those 3 people. Fine. But we want to deal with the other 55%. So we can go add segment, and this will be segment 2. I'm assuming for now that it's the other 55%, it could be some smaller amount. Let's make it a smaller amount. Let's say 25% we're going to deal with, okay? So we have our 45%. Now we're dealing with segment 2, the 25%. Now, what do we want to do here? Well, remember, we need this segment if we're going to split this 25% into different fractions. So what our plan is to divide that 25% unequally among different people. So Abraham is going to get, let's say, 45% of that 25%. Okay. And then the other 55% is going to go to John Hubert. Maybe he's going to get another 25%, et cetera. And you just make the gifts as you go along, fill in whatever part you want. And then we're going to then fill in the balance of that gift with Greer and Greer and Heather. Okay. There's 30% left. They're going to get the balance of that. So this planning is saying, okay, I want 45% to be split equally among these three people, but I want 25% to be divided further. 45% of the 25% to Abraham, 25% of the 25% to John, and 30% of the 25% to Greer and Heather equally. And that's the more complicated planning. So, so that's why you need segments here, because we can't make this gift any other way. What is the impact of this? Why would they want to do that? Why don't we just say, you know, Daniel, Glenda, and Greer split 45%, and then figure out what 45% of 25% would be, and then put that fraction in as its own segment, et cetera. Well, the impact of putting a bunch of gifts within one segment is, if Abraham's not alive, right, and there's no gift over, for example, it's going to automatically go back into this segment two to be redistributed among John and Greer, right? Their percentages. It's the floating shares within one segment, right? So that's the impact of doing gifts within a segment. Any gift over, if they're not alive and we don't create that percentage, is going to get redistributed among the other gifts in that segment. Okay, so that's the impact of these kind of siloed gifts, right? Because a client might say, yeah, I want, you know, I want to split it in these percentages, and if Abraham's not alive, yes, I want it to be redistributed to John and Greer and Heather. Well, if that's the case, then you need to put that in a segment. Okay. So I'm just going to open the floor for a second, or at least as long as we need, to see if there are any questions about that planning. Jump in, just unmute and jump in if you have any questions about that.
Jordy, when does this sort of occur? Like, give me sort of a scenario where you see these kind of instructions being thrown at you.
Yeah, the classic one is where you've got a group of people, for example, siblings, okay? And you want maybe the siblings to be, there are three siblings, you want them to be treated differently, so different percentages, but if any of them aren't alive, you want it to go to the other siblings. So you would pool those all in one segment so that it automatically redistributes among that group of people. So that's one situation where you can see that. You know, the other is just where they say, listen, I'm thinking of it as my family half or my family segment, and I want that to go in this, you know, 3% to this niece, 4% to that niece, but I want it all siloed in one group. That's my 50% kind of thing. That's the other time you kind of see those.
And isn't it often with situations where clients who don't have children, this sort of comes up?
Right. Anytime you're dealing with situations where it's not equally to a group of people, and you're dealing with, you know, it differently. You know, maybe for Abraham, maybe John is disabled, okay, and so we need a Henson trust for John. You know, and so we don't want it all divided the exact same way. It might be the same percentages, but it might be different terms. As long as we have different terms, we need to use a segment for these three different gifts. The only time you don't need a segment is if the gifts are exactly the same. For Daniel, Glenda, and Greer, it's exactly the same. Divided a third, a third, a third. Gift overs are the same. It's to their issue, and then it's to the other beneficiaries. That's fine. That's your sort of simple gift. As soon as you're dealing with different kinds of gifts, either a different percentage or different terms or absolute versus trust or any of those, once they're not all the same, then you need to use this segment idea. Tim, did you have a question?
Just wondering if that's a new button for the segment. I don't remember seeing that before.
It's been around for 6 months probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
most of the time you don't need it because you're making your simple gifts, and you know your percentages are all going to a group of people that are all getting having the same gifts, they're just divided equally. So that's been around for a while.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. We used to, just to know, for those who were users for a long time, we didn't used to have simple gifts, right? You had to always create a segment and then a gift. And so we got rid of that. So now you can just create simple gifts, right? Without going through the whole segment creation. So there was a question here, and I'll just see if I can get it. How about a gift over if none of the people in segment 2 are alive? Right. So eState would, I'll just show you this. So let's say if none of these people were alive, the way this kind of works, like if no one was alive in segment 1, it basically says, if at least one beneficiary is alive, create segment 1. Okay, if none are alive, we don't even create segment 1. We don't even create this 45 parts. Instead, right, basically it's only 25%, 25 shares are created, and it's all representing the entire residue, and it's all going Abraham, John, Greer, and Heather. So it automatically takes account of if there was nobody in segment 2 at all, then the whole segment wouldn't get created. Okay. Now there is one exception to that rule. If the client said, hold on, I want out of that 45%, okay, I want a cash legacy. So I don't want it coming off the top. I want it coming out of this particular 45% to Bart. Okay. I want a fixed amount of, $25,000. So it's a legacy. Okay. Now, eState would see this and say, hold on a second. What happens if Bart's alive, but Daniel, Glenda, and Greer are not? So you'll see a potential lapse here. Okay. So it warns you in that case that you should add other segments as the gift over. Okay. And that will then make sure that Bart gets his 25,000 and the other amounts go to the other segment. So that's how we would do that. But the good thing is that eState warns you about that if it sees a problem. And so what you would do is you would go in here and you'd say, great, it goes to the other beneficiaries. But if there were no other beneficiaries, it goes to the other segments. Now that's fixed that problem. So if Daniel if none of these people were alive, so there were no other beneficiaries, it would go to the other segment, which is segment 2. And eState would draft that accordingly. And that will have fixed that issue. You see, it's now gone, that issue about potential lapse. So it's going to catch you if you do something that's going to cause a potential lapse. See, there's a few questions. Can you gift a cash amount out of segment 2 only? Yeah, so that hopefully that just clarified that. That's the same thing I did with Bart. You could do a cash, you could add a gift, pick an amount to Heather and Bart, and then just put the amount in here, and it's going to come out of only segment 2. It's going to come off the top of segment 2, and then the balance of segment 2 is getting divided among the percentages. And Catherine, if that didn't clarify that, just let me know. If we have 3 children as beneficiaries, all getting equal shares, but one needing a Henson trust, are you saying we create one segment and then add them this way? Well, what I would do is you create separate segments for each of the kids. So this is the situation. This is not unusual. Let me go back to my comment here about when do you need a complex gift? So you need a complex gift whenever you have, when you're not treating all the people within that amount the same. Okay, so in this case, we have 3 kids, one needs a Henson trust. Let me show you how we would do that. So I'll do that in a different scenario just so you can see it. So what we would do, so you could do a couple of things. What I would do is I'd create a separate gift for each kid. So I'd say one gift is Bart, okay? He's getting 100% of that gift, and it's going to him with no strings, okay? And then if he's not alive, it's going to his kids, all right? You can do it by percentages, or we could do it by, you can either show it by percentages, or in this case, we can show it without segments. And this is 100% of Bart. Well, we don't want 100% of Bart. We want him to get one part, an equal part, right? So we can click on parts. Now we have one part to Bart. Now, the next kid is Lisa. And for Lisa, we want a different thing. We don't want an absolute gift. We want a trust, and we want it to be age, 30, and with whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So that's fine. That's Lisa's. And then we want to add a further gift for a Henson trust for Maggie. Okay. I think that's somewhere. Yeah. So this one would be a further, this is a different trust because they're not the same. We can't use just one segment. This one's going to be a Henson trust with a gift over to her issue, etc. So that's how I would do it. I'd have 3 separate gifts, one for each kid. Now, because there's only one beneficiary for each of those gifts, we don't have to worry about thinking about it in segments. You can show it in segments. This is how it would look in segments. There's a segment 1 for Bart getting 100% of segment 1, segment 2, Lisa getting 100% of segment 2, and Maggie getting 100% of segment 3. So you can show it in either way, and that's why you can flip that on or off. Again, it's the reason we don't need to show that is because there's one or multiple beneficiaries that are sharing one segment exactly the same. Okay. In this case, it's one beneficiary, segment 1, one beneficiary for Lisa, one beneficiary for Maggie. So I know it's kind of complicated, but I hope that makes sense. That's how you would do it. You would just create gifts. So I'm just going to clear that again and just show you. If I've got, and you can do this every time, like you don't have to use a class gift or one gift for a group of people. You can do it, you could do them individually. Just add a gift for each kid, right? And whatever the terms of their gift is, just deal with it that way. And if you make a mistake or we think that there might not be a proper gift over or something, then eState will warn you of that. So that's the idea there. So in this case, let's just see. So here's an example. So eState saw that the gift for Lisa there was only a gift over to her issue, but it's quite possible that she has no issue. So eState is warning you, create another gift over in case she has no issue. Great, let's do that. So let's say, okay, if she has no issue, well, I want it to go back to the other gifts, right? I want it to go back to Bart if he's alive, or to Maggie's trust or whatever. Well, that would just be basically other segments. And then it will automatically go back to, so if Lisa's if she survives and then doesn't have kids, it will go divided among the other segments. Okay. And eState automatically drafts it properly. So it determines the beneficiaries at Lisa's death, not at Homer's death, those kinds of things. Like it's going to draft it all properly. So that's kind of this is kind of the complicated thing. But if you got to sort of think through, okay, how this might work in practice if somebody's not alive. And that's what eState is doing. It's making sure, for this trust that if Maggie's not alive, or survives and then dies, but doesn't have issue, it's warning you, we better put in another gift over. Well, who would I want it to go to? Well, probably want it to go to the other segments. That's Bart and Lisa. And so now I've fixed those 2 problems, and you can see that the insufficient gift over warnings are gone. Okay. Most of the time though, right? Most of the time, all you're doing is adding gifts. You're not adding segments, because segments you only use if you're breaking down a percentage into smaller percentages that aren't equal. Okay. So that's that. Some of you might know about our new generation tool. So we're and I better reboot or restart. But you can now view documents live. And you can sort of see what you're doing. We've just beta released it, so it's just coming out in the next day or so. as we work through a couple of issues, but it's going to appear for you right here, and you'll be able to review your draft basically without generating the document. So that's what we're going to release in the next 2 days. It's really, I've started to test it, and it's really helpful. Before I generate the document, I can sort of look at what's going to come out and make sure that it's right before I go to the process of generating the document. So that's the idea there. And any other questions? Would you use segments on a specific asset to be distributed to a group? So right now we're not allowed to divide, or we don't permit, the division of an asset unequally, although it's something that we've had requests for, and so we are going to build that, but that doesn't exist right now. So any other questions about these? And again, these are much more complicated plans that maybe you don't see all the time. If you ever have a question about something, whether, how should I do this? I mean, just, obviously use our live chat, just down here at the bottom, they'll just chat. And if it's a question that, needs my help, I'm around, so I'll get right on a Zoom with you or answer the question through Michaela or whatever. So if you're not sure about what you would want, because again, they have different impacts if you're using a group of beneficiaries within one segment versus each getting a percentage. The gift overs, if one predeceases, is different.
So when you first started, you showed us a very helpful help screen, and just wanted to be reminded how you got there. Was the question mark, and then you
just question mark. Yep.
You typed in something, or rather.
Yeah, you can type in residue. You can type in segments. And up will come. Here's the balance of estate overview, dividing up the balance, common gifts, right? When to use just your add gift button, right?
Okay.
And when to use more complicated, when to use add segments.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That's helpful because, sometimes you just need that reminder.
Sure, no problem. Start with that question mark and type in your question, and that'll certainly help. They've got a lot of answers, but the other thing is just that, it's if you need further help, you just jump on the live chat, right? And then you're good. So, and I do want to show you, sorry, I was just wanted to show you, let me just share my screen. You guys are getting the first glimpse of this. This is the live viewer. So basically, you've got this little button. We're going to have a different icon when it's live and released, but click on that button, pick what document you want to. So if you want to see what it's going to look like in the short will version or the single will version or multiple wills, you just kind of click that, whatever document you want. And we're working on getting the speed down. That's should take about less than 5 seconds to generate. So you can sort of just scroll down and see, oh, this is right what we just drafted, right? Here's what we just drafted with BART, et cetera, right? So you can sort of see it. So one of the, just so you know, the reason we haven't released it yet is there's still a bit of problems with the numbering. The good news is your documents will generate perfectly. It's just the preview that's not quite perfect yet. But that's what we're working on. And so that's the idea. You can see what's going on. You can even search by just doing a Control F. If I want to see the residue clause, yeah, here it is. And I can search here. And then I can actively, while it's still open, I can add a cash gift here to Abe for, $10,000 or $1,000, let's just say. And then I refresh it. And what will come up will be, there you go, is that $10,000 gift. And you can say, oh yeah, I forgot, I should have put a condition on it or something. So that's the idea. So this live viewer, and we're still, like I said, working out a few of the kinks, but I've been using it a little bit, and it's really saving me a lot of time. Before I forget to do something, I can check to see, did I do it? And so that's the idea there. And hopefully that'll be helpful, and we'd love your feedback on it. If there's anything you like or you think should be improved or a feature, please let us know. You can make it bigger or smaller, right? So you can drag it out and it'll appear with your settings the way this happens to be my fonts and all that, but it'll show with your fonts and your inputs and whatever else. So yeah, so that's the idea. I know we covered a lot. There's a few messages, sorry. Oh, great, thank you. Please, I will tell Michaela. Yes, for those who are charged when documents are generated, did what you do just trigger the charge? Nope, not if, for anybody on the flex plan. So if you're on the flex plan, you don't get charged until you generate a document. Michaela, you're wonderful, says Jennifer, and Brody agrees. And yeah, so that's the, thanks, Andrea, for that comment about the preview. It's going to be, well, I know it's helping me, and hopefully it's going to help everybody. But if there's stuff that you like, again, just or don't like, let me know. But the good thing is you can see what it's going to look like before you actually generate it out. So that's it. And you guys got you are the first people to see the preview live. So, and if you see anything, like I said, it may be available to you right now, but if you see, oh, well, look at this, it says paragraph B, know that we're on that. And that's why we haven't announced it yet, because we're still working out a couple bugs here and there. So the good news is, like I said, the documents will generate perfectly. It's not going to say B in your documents. And we've tested all of that thoroughly. So that's not the worry. It's just that the viewers has got the numbering, which is surprisingly, like, I love the development side of things. And it's amazing to me what the difficulties can be. What you think might be simple are often the hardest. So, but by later this week, it'll all be running perfectly smoothly. So thanks, everybody. And hope to see you guys on Thursday. Ian, you and I are talking about multiple wills and some problems that people are having with them, and just some suggestions on when to use them, and some drafting tips and things like that. It's always good to revisit. And so that's so that's great. And we hope to have you join us on Thursday, and then again next Tuesday. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.